Hi, I'm James from Chaosium. I sat down with Art Hunter, who is a member of Chaosium Stream of Chaos and also a talented content creator, streamer, and GM. We talked about safety tools, the various tactics and utilities that are available to GMs so that they can make sure that everybody at their table is as comfortable as possible when they're running a game. I'm going to jump across to the interview in just a moment, but first, please subscribe to the Chaosium YouTube channel, and thanks for watching.
Consent in gaming is really important to ensure that everyone in the space that you've created is having fun and is being challenged in ways that they actually enjoy. So the reason I say challenged in ways they enjoy, rather than saying having fun or necessarily like enjoying themselves as a base, is because there are plenty of things that scare people, and there's plenty of things that people might normally in their day to day not want to experience, but in a game, in a space where they can have some measure of agency and control, those things can be really interesting and fun to explore, even if they make you uncomfortable. And safety in gaming and consent in gaming is a way to just make sure that we have a space to explore things that might make us uncomfortable in a way that doesn't go beyond discomfort and into actual like pain or terror or what have you.
One of the things that I learned that I didn't know about is that consent in gaming and sort of these concepts, they're not necessarily new. We might have new ways of going about them now, but this kind of make sure your players are okay, that's been around for as long as RPGs have, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think uh, like I came to gaming in the mid 2000s as a teenager with a bunch of my mates, and we knew each other, and so there was a level of going into games, um, especially going into D&D and having like that adversarial relationship with your DM. And I would say that like while I look back on a lot of that fondly, I do actually see the ways in which safety tools would have helped in a lot of situations. Even something as simple as saying, "Your fam, let's not rules lawyer today. Like, this is what we've agreed to make sure that the game stays on track and is fun for everyone." Because the other thing is, consent in gaming is not just about safety tools from a like health and wellness perspective. It's also a way to set up sort of agreements in advance on what kind of game you're going to run, and the kind of etiquette you're all going to agree to keep things on track. Um, but in terms of how long it's been around, I mean, you know, kids on the playground are pretty good at making up rules to make sure that things stay on track and certain people win or don't, or get what they want or don't. I think it's just human nature to communicate with one another and try and work out how things are going to be most fun.
So you would see kind of the etiquette things that people put together, like let's leave our phones at the table, or hey, this is a serious game, so let's not crack too many jokes, or let's finish eating before we start touching the minis. These are really just an extension of these same tools.
Yeah, I would say it's two sides to the same coin, which is a session zero. So on one hand, you talk about your safety tools, the things that you're going to use in case something goes wrong. You always hope when you're playing a game that nothing is going to go wrong. But if it does, having those safety tools in place allows you to sort of have that ripcord, if you will, to go, wait, no, we're not gonna do this. Safety tools or consent forms are also there to set that up in advance, so that your GM and your other players aren't going to walk close to that line for you. But the other side of that is also, as yeah, all of the etiquette stuff, which similarly to your consent form is just a bunch of lines that people are saying like, we're cool with this or we're not cool with this from a behavior perspective, from an admin perspective, and it just gives everyone, it makes the implicit explicit in a really helpful way, that then gives you a grounding for any future communication where things might get a little iffy.
If I'm somebody who's maybe been playing TTRPGs for a while, but I've never really dived into formal safety tools, what's my basic steps to add them to a game if I think it's going to improve it? What's my easiest way to go?
There is a free RPG consent checklist online that is published, I believe, by Monty Cook games, which you can Google. It's available. Anyone can use it, and that's a really good starting point for a lot of topics that people might find confronting or may not want to address sort of head on. And then at a larger scale, that RPG consent checklist is connected to a slightly larger piece of work. I believe that is also free, but it like details all of the consent in gaming and what some of the more niche terms like lines or veils means. At a very, very basic level, though, even before you start doing that, you can just do check-ins with people, check-ins with your players or check-ins with your DM, to say, hey, this is a theme that comes up, and I, as a person, know that this theme is a little confronting. How does everyone feel about that? And then also checking in during a game itself. If you see someone who seems to be like a player who is more withdrawn or seems to be, showing the body language of someone who might be a little uncomfortable, stopping the flow of the game to just say, hey, are you okay with everything that's happening? Is there something going on, or are you just tuning out because you've had a long day, or whatever it is? And getting that clarity at the table is a really easy way to make people feel safe and comfortable.
I came to safety tools via convention play when I was jumping into games with strangers, and I learned that it's a fantastic way to get a read on a table and to understand the kind of people you're gaming with when you don't necessarily have the kind of personal connection with them that lets you just ask them questions. Does convention play versus home play change the way that safety tools should be deployed?
That's really interesting. No, I don't think it should. I think there is a difference in the depth of safety tools. I would say that for me personally, when I do a convention game, if I run a one shot, my safety tools are much more rigid and much simpler. So, for example, when I run convention games, my session 0, like, here is all the etiquette, is a list of rules I set. And I say, here is the etiquette of my table. This is what I expect from you if you sit down at my table. And then I check with the players, because as much as I have a God complex, I am not in fact God. So I will check with them and say, is everyone okay with those house rules? And is there anything on that list that people would like to add to or change? And we can have a very small discussion. But at the end of the day, for a convention game, we don't have a lot of time, and so I want to really ground some of those just general etiquette. So please, no rules lawyering. Respect everyone's boundaries, respect everyone's pronouns, respect the safety tools we're going to have in play. And the safety tools are generally something very simple, like the X card, which is if someone taps the X card, stop whatever's going on and move on from that scene. For a home game, I would use a much more robust system. So the RPG consent checklist. There is an expanded version of the X card, which is X, N, and O, which I'm happy to go into more detail on if you're interested. And then there is also that ability to check in with people during play or between sessions if it's a longer running session or longer running campaign, to say, how are we feeling about these themes? Is there anything that we were okay with last session that for whatever reason in the intervening month or however long it's been, we're now not okay with anymore? Are there things that we weren't okay with a month ago because COVID, and that we're maybe okay to start looking at and addressing now? So it's a lot more of a flexible system, and it is a constant dialogue versus convention where it's kind of one and done, with the exception of moments within actual play that need sort of ripcording.
So I've personally experienced and seen a lot of circumstances in which X cards are useful and they're important. But I've also seen online, usually in a kind of disingenuous or misunderstood way, people who critique safety tools. Do you have a response to everybody who kind of says, hey, safety tools ruin games and stuff like that? And to be clear, I'm setting you up here with something, I would also answer with a critique to that idea.
Yeah. For anyone who says safety tools ruin games, I would say bad games ruin friendships. If you are the kind of person who puts your game and your vision over the safety and comfort of your friends. Like, I mean, I'm not here to tell you how to run your game. You do you, boo. This is all very much, use as much of this as is helpful to you, and don't if you don't want it. But for me personally, I would much rather have my friends feel safe and comfortable when playing in potentially unsafe and uncomfortable spaces, because honestly, it actually ends up meaning that we can explore things a lot more deeply and a lot more interestingly when everyone is actually um, enthusiastically consented to the idea of exploring something that would otherwise be an absolute no-go for, maybe a less invested group.
I want to talk about what happens when people break the safety tools or when there's rules that get, pushed too far. And there's two variants of this, really. There's genuine accidents and there's people who are deliberately trying to push the boundary. Let's start with genuine wholehearted accidents. If you're at a table and you see something, get slipped through, or somebody doesn't realize that they might have gone past something, and there's various different formats of this, but assuming a good nature, what's your approach as a GM or as a player at the same table to try and, make sure that everyone stays comfortable and that the safety tools don't become, I don't know, superseded?
So generally, a gentle reminder would be my first step. So if someone has, stepped over something that another person at the table said was a line or a veil for them, it would just be a very quick in the moment, hey, just a reminder, we said that that was off the table for this. And then generally, depending on what had happened, if it was, say, like a bit of a scene or something that needed to be rolled back, it would just be checking in with a player who'd said like, no, I don't want this, and going, hey, like, how do you feel about this? If it is a proper line in the sand that someone's drawn, gone, absolutely not. I, as a GM, especially in a convention game, would usually just make the call to roll that back and go like, that didn't happen, scratch that from a record, let's continue from the point that we just had, keeping in mind that we have those lines and veils. That's pretty much, if someone does something accidentally, usually a brief reminder is enough to jog their memory, because people do get lost in the moment and it's fine. And most people in that case are very apologetic, and they didn't mean anything by it. And so long as there is a genuine sense of, oh, sorry, like, oops, that's fine. Most tables are absolutely fine to just move on from that point.
So in any table, when something happens where a player is, deliberately breaking the etiquette of what this table wants, it's difficult. And we've had lots of people, in the Chaosium interview series who are talking about strategies that you can, use to deal with that. But I'd like to hear, within the framework of the safety tool environment, what is your approach?
I'd be surprised if the approach is any different, really. I would still absolutely start with a gentle reminder, because I will always come from a place of, I am going to assume that what you've done was a mistake, or you don't fully realize the implications of what's happening right now. So a gentle reminder and a reinforcement of why these safety tools are in place and why we're playing with them and why it's important to respect boundaries and that kind of thing. If that doesn't change the behavior and it keeps happening, a firmer do not do that again, depending on the level of what it is they're doing. If you're flinging slurs at the table, like, you get one shot of being told stop it and then you're off. For a convention game, again, I'm kind of keeping this in the realm of convention game, because when you talk about home games, that gets a little bit different. But yeah, it would be assume best intention and work in the basis of, this might be an accident. If it is repeated, and it is perhaps clearer that this is either someone who is doing it intentionally or just doesn't seem to really understand the ramifications, then a firmer stop. And if that then continues, then it would be we are going to stop the game now.
So I'm reaching back and I'm channeling, myself years ago when I sort of first started becoming aware of safety tools. And one of the issues I had was that I went, okay, I want to put this in my game. I can see why this is important, but I'm literally worried I'm going to do it wrong. There's a lot going on. I don't know kind of how far to push, how far not to push. There's a lot of moving parts. What is your advice to somebody who might be concerning themselves with those kind of questions or worries?
Doing it wrong is better than not doing it at all. Uh, Safety tools, there's kind of, I would say there is no way to do safety tools wrong if you are at least attempting to use them in the way that they are designed to be used, which is to ensure a safe environment for everyone at the table. Um, the thing I think that is most important to know about safety tools is they are there as a just in case. So if you never use your safety tools, great. Yay for you. If you do use your safety tools, you didn't do anything wrong. That's what they're there for. Um, Having to use safety tools in the moment can actually feel a little confronting because it can feel like, as the GM, you can feel, oh no, I did something bad. Or as a player, you can feel like, oh no, I'm not sure if I want to like make someone else feel uncomfortable because I'm uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, the whole point is so that whatever is going on doesn't escalate or doesn't get worse. And safety tools are there to be used. So if you're using them or you have them, and you're communicating with your players or your table about why they're there and what their purpose is, and everyone is kind of doing their best, it's the same as gaming. Do your best. It's fine.
So one of the things you've alluded to a few times is that safety tools often make games better because you can dive real deep into things, make sure everyone's on the same page, and you can make sure that the game is focused in the direction that all the players want it to be focused in. Can you talk about the best case scenario? Can you give an example of why safety tools are so great in this regard?
Ah, yeah, safety tools, when done correctly, as I said, allow for a space of exploration. So, one thing that I come across when I use the RPG checklist is they use the traffic light system, which is green is enthusiastic consent, yellow is I am okay with this within some boundaries, and red is you're no go, you don't touch it. And what I find really interesting is the number of times I've had players put things as yellow, but then actually say, no, this I'm not comfortable with, but I do actually want to explore it. I just want to explore it within this framework. Like I'm fine with this, but not with this. So a really great example of that would be I am fine to have this happen to an NPC. I don't want it to happen to my character. And that's a really good line to have because it still allows you to explore certain topics together. But now you know as the GM where that player's boundaries are. And also, it gives you just that little note in the back of your head that when you are going into those particular areas to stop and just check in with that player and go, hey, how you doing? And often what I find in those cases as well, more often than not, is we'll get to something and I'll have in the back of my head, oh, I know this is a difficult topic for someone. I'll check in with them. I'll say, how you going? And a lot of the time I get a big grin and it's just, this is great. Keep going. But for me, the most important thing is not that it is that they're having a great time, but it's that we are still, for me, I still know that I'm checking in. And if there was ever a point where someone went, oh, this is making me uncomfortable, I can be like, great, we're going to move on from this. Like, we've done a bit of exploration. We can come back to it if we're interested in it later. And it's also a good opportunity for me, potentially at the end of the game, to just check in with that person and go, hey, like, did we hit the point of discomfort and go over it? Did we hit the point of discomfort and that was kind of it for you that day? Like where are we sitting and how did you feel about that exploration? It just makes for a much more complex and robust story when you work together to explore things. And the best way to work together is to communicate, and safety tools are a framework that makes that form of communication a lot easier.